Welcome to Gen Z Convo, a place where we receive anonymous confessions from teenagers all around the world. I'm Kaylee, your host today, and we will discuss peer pressure in the 21st century, as it has been a hot topic requested by our listeners. Joining me today is guest star psychologist Vante.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here today.
So, right off the bat, have you ever experienced or gone through any situation in life where you feel certain pressure on yourself?
Oh, yes, I have. Peer pressure is a common experience that I think a majority of us has gone through. It is how we are influenced or expected by others into doing something that at first we may have no intention of doing so. For example, during my high school phase, I was pressured by my friends into skipping class since they kept telling me to do so. That is what we called negative peer pressure, as skipping class is well against my moral code.
Thank you for your sharing. It was really informative and I can definitely relate to your story. Perhaps I think there are many other youngsters out there thinking the same as well. In fact, we have selected two stories from the audience to share in our show today. Now, let me just go straight into the first one. When I was in 8th grade, I was diagnosed with severe depression due to the heavy routine of studying I set myself up in order to keep up with my classmates' grades. Well, this one is tough, isn't it?
Yes, and it's quite heartbreaking for me to admit this, but I have seen so many cases like this. Don't get me wrong, having an organized study schedule is great, it's amazing. However, having to compare the results with others and forcing yourself to study intensely is not healthy. This is sadly a perfect example of unspoken peer pressure, in which the student was exposed to their peers' high grades and decided they have to be as good as them. Please remember that there is beneficial peer pressure where you are positively motivated by others, but still, it can easily be mistaken in cases like this.
Thank you so much for sharing these helpful thoughts, Miss Vante. Now it's time for the last story to be told. I have had plastic surgeries 5 times. It all began while I was in high school. I was so insecure and embarrassed about my appearance since my friends all implied on how I should change my nose or lips. Now I can barely recognize myself anymore.
Wow, that was very heavy to take in. I think this person's story is just so devastating and extreme and just shows us how impactful a person's word can be. This falls under the most common type of peer pressure, which is spoken peer pressure. The writer's so called friends kept pushing them to change their appearance, which results in them losing themselves. I truly hope that whoever wrote this realized that there was nothing wrong with how you look back then or now, and that you chose to ignore everything negative someone has to say to you.
I personally agree with you. The situation of peer pressure is actually happening extremely common these days. Raising awareness among adults and the students themselves is perhaps the bare minimum that we need to reach.
Precisely. And I also like to note that we all have different journeys in our life. We don't always share the same goal. We each have our own destinations and our own unique ways to reach them. Sure, there are positive ones, but the majority of the time we are persuaded into engaging doing a specific activity that's against our moral code. Just because other people's method of achieving their goal is different does not make yours wrong. You will always, and I mean always, have a choice to make, and it should be based on what you think is best for yourself and not on others' opinions.
And that was the end of our podcast, Gen Z Convo. Thank you, Miss Fante, for your participation and great talk today. And see you guys in the next session.